This is Richard Stuverud, and you are listening to Nothing Shocking Podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Ament, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Req'd Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Richard Stuverud from the Seattle music scene. He's promoting his newest solo album coming out here in 2024, Sunset Ghosts.
Also promoting the new War Babies album, the Vault album. You can find it now online. August 30th, Ivan Julian, originally from Richard Hell and the Voidoids, will be performing at the Raccoon Motel in Davenport, Iowa. What else we got going on?
All right. Part of Alternating Currents, Req'd Records and Trash Can Annie are bringing band Facts with New Standard Men and Elliott Bay Towers, Saturday, August 17th, 8:30, free for all ages.
Exciting. So let's get to the interview.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Richard, welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Ament.
Richard, thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
We are so excited to have you on. Thank you for all the correspondence. We're just ecstatic to have you on tonight. So let's get right into this. You're currently preparing the release of your newest solo endeavor. Can you give our listeners an insight to this new musical material that's going to be coming out called Sunset Ghosts?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking. So this will be basically my third release since I've been kind of focusing on going solo. The first one was 2020, then 2022, 2023. So I'm trying to keep up with the content. And so for this fall, I'm going to drop an album called Sunset Ghosts, and that'll be dropping on September 20th this year. It's a heavier record, actually. I think if I were to compare, some of my other works, if someone asked me what my favorite thing is about playing drums, I'd have to say guitar. I love loud guitars, so it's a pretty good, heavy guitar record, this latest one, so I'm pretty happy with it.
Oh, fantastic.
Talk a little bit about going solo and that making that decision to kind of focus on yourself for a little while and put this out. Can you talk about how that transition has worked?
Yeah. So I think COVID, as unfortunate as that whole nightmare was, I think what happened was everyone was in isolation, and I just felt like that was a pretty good opportunity. I mean, I'd been working on songs for my first release, Memories and Kodachrome. And, as a drummer, I've always been, kind of doing the songwriting thing on the side. Like, in most of the bands, if I go all the way back to the Fastbacks, my early punk rock days in Seattle, Kurt Block was, main writer in that band. But somewhere along the line, I was able to bring in a song or two. And so I've always been sort of operating that way as a drummer, singer-songwriter, just kind of just see what I could bring in. And then working with Jeff Ament, on all the side projects, there were moments there where I think the songwriting thing really started to take shape, really started to evolve. And to the point where I think by 2020, I was able to like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to, get some stuff out there. And so I've just been kind of rolling along with that, ever since. So it's been pretty awesome.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about, the COVID-19 lockdown. And we've talked to oodles of artists during the pandemic that had, I guess, they had different sides to the spectrum of creating during the pandemic. Some got writer's block. Some just could not get into their wheels in motion to write new music. And other artists found it to be like this creative journey that they had all this freedom because they had all this time. But for you, how did it work out? Did you find it to be a creative process for you?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good perspective you got there. Because I sort of feel like it was so freaky when all that was going down, and just trying to figure out like, okay, if you're a creative person, are you going to get really super depressed and just kind of, not get inspired, or, I think for me I was just able to sort of, okay, well, because I also teach drum lessons, and so everything was just on hold, and it was just like inside, and I think for some reason I think it made sense to just kind of hunker down and start writing, and and then I just I don't know how you guys feel, but like I know we're way out of COVID and all that, but I think ever since then, I don't know. I can't speak for the collective humanity, but man, I really feel that there's this element of just, I don't know. It feels like people may have gotten pretty used to the isolation, and we kind of rethink a lot of things about like what our social structures are, and so I think ever since then, I don't know. I feel like personally I've been a little more isolated, but I kind of feel like that's one way to really get behind, keep them busy with writing and recording. I mean, I'm absolutely, obsessed with recording, the whole recording process. So, it's a pretty good obsession, I think.
Yeah, very good. Well, for sure. Let's talk about that recording process and how it works for you. Do you do most of your songs at your home, or do you go into a proper studio, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of musicians that they've been able to really kind of fine tune that home recording. I mean, these days, pretty much you have some decent mics, and a laptop. You can really go pretty far with that. Mm-hmm. And I demo a lot of things off my voice memo, just off the iPhone. But I still really love the idea of just going in to a studio. So I'm a little bit behind on the whole other side of things on, engineering skills and all that stuff. And I feel like I don't mind having some limitations with that, because I think it allows me to just really enjoy that recording process. I work with a guy up here in Oakland, Bart Thurber, and it's just a cool old school guy, and just real comfortable space, and so I've just been doing most of my recordings there. And recently, I tracked 5 songs off Sunset Ghost, the next one coming out down in San Diego. And there's an engineer down there, Ben Moore, and I like to joke around and call him Ben making things sound more better. But I met him when Jeff had asked me to come down and record what I thought was maybe a Jeff Ament solo record. And it turns out that I think it was a lot of material that he brought into Pearl Jam for their latest album. And it was kind of funny because I just fell in love with the place. Like the drum sounds were just epic. And so I made a point to 6 months later, okay, I'm gonna track part of my record here. And I just have to give a shout out to my right hand man, Neil Walter, who's in LA, and he's just we collaborate, and all the guitar ideas I have and loose riffs, it's like he just makes it happen, so that's been a huge thing as a singer-songwriter drummer. I'm really fortunate to have some great players, and I had Jeff come in and play bass on a couple of tracks for this latest record. So in that regard, super happy and grateful to just have a lot of these other musicians. I track primarily keyboard parts, piano, mellotron, and an open tune guitar. I can make my way around that for the writing process, and then I just kind of build tracks and go from there. So I kind of dance around that sort of multi-instrumentalist. I sort of take care of a few things, but really the secret weapon is having some great friends and players come in and give it a bash. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, those are some good friends to have. My question. That was kind of my question. I was going to one of the ones I was going to ask you is just about other players on the albums. Did you have help, or did you primarily play most of the tracks?
Yeah, there's a couple guys I play with off and on here in Oakland, and I sort of grouped 3 of these guys together to also try and track some things live, because there's no denying the energy you get. So I don't really have a band, and then I for live stuff I put various lineups together. But for the studio, it's really all about trying to figure out, okay, I got these songs going, and then I'll just sort of, since I'm kind of self-producing it, I'll be like, okay, wait, I think these guys would be great for these group of songs, and so yeah, I've got a guy here, Sluggo Cauley, Drew Gordon, and a guy named Dave Flores on a few tracks. And then my buddy Tim Zazulio, who's going to be going out on tour with Duff McKagan this fall. Yeah, he's great. He and I were in a band together in '95, post-war babies, kind of that little pocket, early '90s, mid '90s. So he came in and laid down some pretty killer solos on a couple tunes. So, and then I got Jeff on some, and there's another guy. There's another Jeff, Jeff Rouse in Seattle. Yep. He's just mega. Yeah, he's so good, and so yeah, it's pretty awesome.
When it comes to the songwriting for Sunset Ghost, can you compare and contrast your songwriting methods in the now to when you first started songwriting way back?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think when I look back on some of those earlier songs, I kind of feel like there might have been a little lack of confidence, and I think the older I get, and just the more stuff I listen to, like for instance, the last song on this record, it's the first time I ever wrote a song over 5 minutes. I mean, I'm kind of that power pop guy. I like, songs, 2:45, 3 minute, 3:30. And I wrote this song, and it's a piano driven tune. So, when I go there, I don't set out to dive into kind of the ballad thing, but a lot of times, if it's a pretty melancholy, low key tune, it'll be like piano and mellotron. And after watching Beatles Get Back, we all know the genius element of the Beatles, but just zeroing in on McCartney and how he was just playing piano and singing at the same time, which that sort of thing for me in the studio, 95% of the time I'm building tracks up and then doing the vocals later. Very rarely have I been able to kind of pull off a vocal that I'm really happy with whatever instrument, if it's strumming, simple guitar part, or more often, piano. And, I wrote this tune, A Memory Can Weigh a Ton, closes out the album, and man, I got lucky. And I think it was just I kept thinking about McCartney. I even used a mic that had that fuzzy, I forget what those mics are called, just 70s, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And engineer was really encouraging. He's like, hey man, I think, you've been practicing this at home, let's just, you're nice and relaxed. Let's just do it, But, that tune is just insane. It does clock in at just under 8 minutes. So I don't know what I was thinking there, but it's a good album closer,
Oh, very good.
But yeah, so I think, to answer your question a little bit with that songwriting over the years, I think, it just like anything, it's a little cliche answer, but I don't know, just the more you dig in, you just start, it's almost starts to become muscle memory, when I'm sitting down at the kit, so many memories come in, from just ever since the early days. And I think songwriting can kind of maybe fall into that category a little bit as well, just kind of keep on it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as a big fan of back catalog, looking at this, you do have a wide variety of styles. You like you mentioned punk with the Fastbacks, and you've played with Robbie Robb and Three Fish, and
right.
Trace Mountains is kind of blues, a little bluesy, and War Babies hard rock, and so you've had a pretty wide variety there. How have those different styles and stuff influenced you in your songwriting?
Yeah, that I've always felt a little bizarre at times, when I start to reflect on all the different bands. And I would say the subgenre, it's weird. It's almost like when you talk to session players that have a pretty diverse, style, those guys are kind of bouncing around. I never fancied myself as being a session player, but I feel like all my experiences with different bands, and then, even getting signed and then, getting dropped, right? And so it's you try and stick it out. And then I think drummers have a little bit more leeway, in a way, okay, this project's kind of maybe run its course a little bit, and you kind of venture on to maybe some other opportunities. But I kind of feel like there's moments where in the songwriting, so there's a song on this latest record that it's a guilty pleasure thing, but the riff is pretty similar to Iggy Pop's "I Want to Be Your Dog," and that's, it's like I caught myself going, God, I want to write a song in that vein, and I just didn't know if I could really pull it off, and tracking that one with my buddy Neil, I'm like, hey man, is this sounding too much? Like Iggy, he's like, no, you're going to a couple new chords. It's all good, man. So, I think sometimes, if I reflect on like maybe stuff I'm listening to, that will definitely kind of affect, what might get pushed around in the songwriting realm,
Absolutely. Well, as you were putting the finishing touches on Sunset Ghost, were you able to walk away from tinkering and be satisfied with the end product, or did you want to keep tinkering with it?
Yeah, I mean, that is like a huge thing that, and Jeff and I have had these conversations with even the last RNDM record. We had experimented with, some more synths and, even like kind of drum machine parts that I would play like an acoustic kit around like a drum sample. So we were experimenting, and it started to get pretty intense because that was Joseph Arthur, prolific songwriter in that project, and he's made some amazing recordings, and he's incredible in the studio. I mean, there were moments where Jeff and I were like, wow, let's just provide a music bed and see what this guy can do. And we all kind of, brought it, when it came to recording. But there was a moment on that second album where it was just, we were almost like it was getting a little bit weird with like, okay, some of us were feeling like it was done. And then there's that never ending experimental, element. So, like being a third of that band, I try and like extrapolate certain experiences with all the bands I've been in and recording, and just kind of go, okay, am I being sort of like, too critical of like certain parts and kind of a perfectionist, so I'll catch myself like, okay, I think it's time to put a fork in it, as one of my old engineers would say, like, put a fork in it, man, it's done, So yeah, I think as I'm getting older, it's like a little bit easier to just kind of like let it go, and but yeah, it's definitely a challenge though, because you're like, you let certain things slide, you got to live with it, But I think that's what makes things really interesting. I think when you hear like imperfections, like Zeppelin comes to mind, man.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear, God, it's just like, it's almost like, oh, it has to be kind of a little bit loose,
Oh, exactly.
Now Rush, on the other hand, God, man, I have this like fascination with that band as well. Like, Neil Peart was never like, I always respected him and never wanted to play like him. But then when you listen to like classic Rush, it's like incredible.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit, those guys, like, and, but, then you go and, if I look on the punk rock moments, it's like, it's all about just being really loose,
Absolutely.
It was refreshing today, you guys. I was driving back from a run, and I heard someone just cranking the Clash on their car stereo, and I was just like, not to bash other genres, but I'm just like, God, thank you, like, turn it up, But,
very good.
Yeah.
I just want to take it back to your last album, Hummingbirds. Just talk about that one for a little bit. My favorite song on that one is the opening track, "Feeling Lucky," a nice hard rocker.
Nice. Yeah.
And then the last one, here cover, "Here Comes a Regular" from the Replacements.
There you go.
Yeah, Can you talk a little bit? And then, I picked up on a few of the songs, where I think you're talking about either, I mean, I don't know if you're talking about your son or your family, but you could definitely, hear some tones about, singing about love and family and what it means to you as a writer. It's pretty cool. It's a good album.
Oh, totally. Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, replacements are huge. I mean, Paul Westerberg's, I'm just such a huge, fan of his, just his songwriting, his style of singing and everything.
Yeah.
It was weird. I was going through this phase where I was like taking songs that you wouldn't normally hear on piano, and even though there is piano on that original Replacements tune, it's not really, I mean, that's an acoustic guitar driving that song, and so that was like kind of a cool experiment, just to like, God, I always loved this song, and why not just, try and do the song some justice, and so that was a cool thing. And I'm just kind of the whole like family and love thing. I mean, that's it's kind of interesting just going through. I feel like a lot of times in songwriting, the lyrics will be pretty challenging for me personally, and kind of putting that stuff together. And there's a song on there, Stargazers, that I'd recorded out in Joshua Tree when I was down there working with Robbie from Tribe After Tribe and a few other people. And, it's like there's just certain moments where, if I'm out of town, I mean, recording these days, I'm not touring a whole lot, but there's this longing, it's like, oh wow, I'm thinking about my family, thinking about my wife, thinking about my kid, and so a lot of that longing will kind of find its way into songs. And Hummingbirds was really special because I was able to bring my son in, and that was just something that I can't even really put it into words without sounding too cheesy, but it's just like unbelievable, just to kind of bring him in that environment and not push it too hard. Cause I mean, when you're a parent, like even when he started playing drums in diapers, man, it's like, and he's getting older, and I'm like, hey, let's keep playing. And didn't want to, push too much, but yet let him kind of gravitate, and now, my son Alexander's, he's writing his own tunes. Nice. And we're collaborating on a lot of stuff. And so now it's gone beyond like me bringing him in to guest on my stuff. Now it's like, wow, this is totally cool. Really, really rewarding. My engineer, he also has a kid about similar age, and he's just like, whoa, this is, it kind of pulls on the heartstrings a little bit. Like we're singing, harmonies together live, it's pretty special moment,
Oh, very good.
So,
well,
yeah.
I guess if you want to take away the songwriting and your vocals, but I guess maybe compare and contrast, you getting in the studio, banging out your own material opposed to you being a band member in the past. Mm-hmm. And is the approach still the same for you, or is it different, recording your own music opposed to recording music for, as a band member?
You're right. Yeah, no, that dynamic is pretty interesting. And I actually love both, really. If I look back at that, when you start to kind of look at like, okay, well, what's my role here, and I think it's always been really cool. I mean, that's one thing I teach my students. I mean, it's hard to teach it, but it's like listening is like such a huge part, and then just having that trust, so when you're in a band dynamic and you're just like, okay, if everyone is on the same page as far as like, okay, play for the song, what what's needed, for this song. You let the song kind of dictate where things go. If everyone's on board with that, it can be pretty cool, even though their power struggles can evolve in that dynamic. But when I'm recording my own stuff, I have to sort of like manage that a little bit. Like, okay, I want to focus on these overdubs because I kind of feel like what I call ear candy. All of a sudden it's almost like the ornamentation, right? So it's like, okay, if you get too immersed in the ornamentation, you could lose the continuity of the tune. You know what I mean? Like the core part of the song. But if you're doing like a couple songs, the last few songs I've recorded, I mean, it's bizarre. I've done it, like played every instrument. I'm there just with the engineer, and it's almost kind of a bizarre, like, whoa, I'm in total control, but I have to kind of be really mindful of like, being objective in a subjective moment. That's what the studio is all about for me. It's like, okay, I could be out here thinking that I'm tracking this killer drum part and go back in the control room. It's like, no, don't do that. It's like kind of amazing. And, I've been having conversations, I've been doing some drum tracks for a project with the Block brothers. So Kurt Block from the Fastbacks and Al Block. We've been doing this project called Bad Scene. And what's interesting is, Al, the bass player, songwriter, he's out on the East Coast, and then Kurt's up in Seattle, and I'm in the Bay Area, and they'll get things together and then send me, some loose tracks and put drums on, and it's been kind of a weird way to work, which actually a lot of people were working that way during the whole COVID thing, but it is kind of interesting to like, well, we got this distance, and it's been pretty interesting,
Very good.
So,
yeah. Jeff, you get the next one?
Well, I know you've moved to Oakland, but we talked to some artists, that come from famous towns where bands spawn from. Do you ever make it back to Seattle much, or do you just stay in Oakland?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I do actually. I kind of feel like, I moved away from Seattle in '98. And moved out to Chicago. Are you guys? Where are you guys located?
Yeah, we're Rock Island, Illinois. We're about 2.5-3 hours, southwest of Chicago, and right on the Iowa-Illinois border.
Oh, killer! Yeah, no, my wife was in Chicago. She's architect, and I, back in '98, I was just like, hey, you have a chance to kind of leave the hometown. I'll go out to Chicago, and. We lived there for about 3 years, and then continued, over east in Philly and New York. But yeah, I always like to gravitate back to Seattle, and if anything, just like having so much history.
Yeah.
But then I try not to get too nostalgic every time I go back, because really there's like a memory around every corner. It's insane, and I try and, also I don't want to be too much of a tourist in my own town, but, it's been nice to, do some of these in-stores. I've been doing in-stores at Easy Street Records. Matt Vaughn's great supporter of, so many artists, primarily in the Northwest, but it's nice that I can kind of sneak back to the hometown and rock a few little in-stores here and there. It's been pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Well, it wouldn't be us if we did not discuss the War Babies with you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brad just released the band's Vault album. Jeff and I we're anticipating our CDs coming in the mail here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're just huge fans of that band, of the one album, and the Suicide Squad too. By the way.
Oh yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, you got that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, so here's the question I have, and we had Brad on, I think 2 years ago. I think it was.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So here. And he never really answered the question, so I'm going to put you on the hot seat. You're going to answer this for me. So the band is still known as the band that brought the 90s Seattle sound to the forefront. There's all this on the internet. There's all this discussion about what the War Babies were, and they were the forefront of the Seattle sound. And I guess maybe slightly before the grunge label was put on the band.
You're right.
Do you feel that the War Babies were the true groundbreakers in the grunge movement?
Well, that's a really good question, and what's interesting is, and I think Brad will agree. Well, even Tommy as well. Sort of existing before the whole grunge explosion. And being in bands. I mean, and I'll speak for myself. In the '80s, it was more of the punk rock thing, but then once grunge, evolved, and again, it might be like how what the definition, like, because I think depending on who you talk to, you talk to some people, they'll be like, okay, Mudhoney, Tad, we're really like the real deal, and without even mentioning Nirvana and Soundgarden, which, of course we have to, bring those guys in. But what's interesting is with the War Babies, when Tommy and I first got together, and I had already done the Suicide Squad EP with Brad, and didn't know much about TKO, but then once I did my homework, it was like, holy shit, this guy can sing, fucking amazing, Yeah, so, when we brought Brad in, I mean, I guess the one idea, we were thinking a little bit more Mata Hoople, kind of Aerosmith, but Guns N' Roses had already broke, and so there's no denying, elements of that kind of seeping in. But, we signed to Columbia. Nick Terzo signed us, and that was Alice in Chains A&R guy. And, and Alice in Chains, they were kind of glammy in the late 80s. And so they kind of did, I wouldn't say a 360, but they definitely, I think, when they were observing Soundgarden and all of that, they were like, okay, we're going to find our voice, somewhere in between. And I think War Babies likewise was sort of not on the fence with anything, but just really like, okay, well, we're not going to get as gnarly as like Mudhoney or Tad, just to name those guys, but yet we're not, going to go all the way to this other, I wouldn't even know what to describe the other side of that. So we were sort of in this kind of interesting spot. And, but what's funny, guys, when we were tracking the debut album at A&M in LA, the van picked us up. We all had apartments, the label, it was really sweet. It was so rock and roll. I mean, it feels like it was just yesterday, but literally we're just like, all right, we're tracking this big production record. It's so awesome. And we're in LA, and all of a sudden Nirvana comes on the radio, and the record had gone to #1. And we were all in the van just like, not bummed, but we were just like, holy shit, we're not doing that, And so we all kind of just had a good laugh. But I would say, in retrospect, man, looking back, and we cultivated a pretty solid following. We broke the record for most alcohol sales at a venue called Rock Candy. Yeah. And, not that really matters, but, kind of, it meant something, like, hey, people are having a good time,
Exactly.
But, oh, yeah, dude, it's great. Like when we were going over the material, that's, going to be released, or I think the vinyl's on its way. I'm not exactly sure where that's at.
Mm-hmm.
But these songs are so fun. And I can't wait till we like get some shows together.
No, nice.
I mean, it's going to be like, I don't know, I think it's going to be better. I don't know how to describe it. If we can just focus in on, what we need to do from the first album and then this new stuff, and we just really hunker down and put a show together, it's just going to be killer. It's going to be, all that stuff's just going to come back and so
you guys better come to Chicago.
I know. Totally. You guys are pretty big Cheap Trick fans, I would say. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Saw them last year.
Nice. Yeah. Anytime I just hear about Chicago and the surrounding area, it's like, oh man, I can't help it. Go into Robin Sanders is definitely one of my heroes.
Very good.
Nice.
Jeff,
well, one band we didn't talk about, you've had, we talked about, we kind of tried to dabble in a little bit of the bands you've been in. I believe it's Req'd, REQ''D.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? That's like alternative country. Can you talk a little bit about that band?
That's cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome. You found out about that. That was, kind of a low-key project. Sluggo Colley used to be in a band called the Grannies, and I didn't really know much about them, but they got some punk rock credibility, Bay Area, and his kid went to the same elementary school as my son Alexander. They became friends, and then Sluggo and I, sort of hit it off with just kind of like our punk rock connection, and so he was working on some songs, kind of trying to do his own thing, away from the Grannies, and he kind of just had this like kind of country punk, vibe going, and we just really hit it off. And Sluggo's been great. Like, he's the one that introduced me to Bart Thurber, who's been engineering all my stuff here in Oakland. So it's kind of a small world. And so we tracked, and I'm trying to think. I think we've done like 3 records. Kind of lost track. But been really cool. And I brought Sluggo in for a couple tunes, on this latest album of mine. But yeah, super cool. I'm trying to think. COVID kind of hit that band pretty hard, because we had like a couple singers, and it was almost like, the COVID thing just kind of affecting everybody at different times. And, we decided to take a break for a little bit, and then, things just, I don't know, never really got back on track, but pretty awesome. Have you checked out some of the music? Have you?
Yeah. I listened to a little bit of Pulling Up the Floorboards.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, great artwork too. Like just on the what's been made hard copy. Really good.
Well, I know that band. You guys got stuff on Bandcamp, and you've got your solo stuff on Bandcamp, and kind of a big fan of Bandcamp. I've been following some other bands and stuff that are out there.
Nice.
What a cool concept. I wish that would have been around a long time ago. But can you talk about using that platform?
Oh yeah. So I'm trying to keep that rolling, because Bandcamp is almost acts as like a website to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And then I think other platforms are definitely, there's a lot of ambiguity with different platforms, and I know like major artists kind of frown when it comes to like Spotify and streaming, but then we start looking at like artists that are pretty obscure and unknown. It's almost like, I don't know, we're kind of like, okay, we better at least get something going on this, on some of these other platforms. But yeah, Bandcamp is great.
Have you checked out that Dweezil Zappa's rewardmusic.com? I believe that's what it's called.
No. What's that about?
Jeff knows a little bit better about it. He can explain it a little bit better than I can.
Well, it sounded to me it was kind of like Patreon or something like that, where something similar, where but it's 100% artist controlled, and you have subscriptions where you can put various content levels out there where they can access different things, and
in a merch store,
and it would have a merch store that you could order. You don't have to have a bunch of stock. It'll print on demand, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, my manager has been kind of we've had these conversations where it's like, okay, what are we doing with the streaming versus hard copy, and it's kind of a guilty pleasure, vanity project, if you will. But yeah, I just feel like every time I'm doing a release, man, I gotta have vinyl.
Yes,
I know it's just it's really kind of crazy, but
I'm still happy when bands are doing CDs because I invested so much in that medium that I'm having a hard time breaking away from it. But
yeah, and I think it does make a lot more sense to go vinyl when you're touring. I believe but even so, I think the idea is just to kind of follow through with that medium, and the managers talk about some distribution options, or even just getting a hold of key record stores, just kind of old school, DIY, just try and get some records out there. I noticed that you guys are Req'd Records. I think there's.
Yeah, we have 2 locations here in the Quad Cities, and every once in a while they'll bring somebody in and have a little open mic night or something. It's kind of
that's great. Yeah, I was checking that out. It looks really good. I'm just curious about that.
But I wanted to get to the next question, and I don't know if Jeff's got any more questions left, but let's just make this the last question of the evening. So
sure.
So you've been a band member your entire life that went solo.
Right.
And I guess in this part of your career now, how do you view yourself? Do you view yourself as the band member that went solo, or do you feel as though that you're a solo artist now that could go back to being a band member? I guess what title do you hold right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think sometimes my wife asks me that as well. Like, hey, you focusing on drumming or singer-songwriter? And she's been so supportive. Like, yeah, do it all. I kind of feel like I am in this kind of interesting position where I know that because drums, that is my go-to instrument. That is what my pride and joy. Like all the moments, come down to that being in that role. And even in the obscure moment, filling in for Matt Cameron when Pearl Jam was here in Oakland. It was so surreal. But, even though that was a obviously elevated gig, 20,000 guest drumming, but it did remind me like, okay, this is sort of like my main thing that I have to always, remember that's really, kind of an important thing. But songwriting and recording as a solo artist has really brought a lot of joy in my life, where I think the drumming gig, it can be kind of hit and miss, and, I don't really want to think about being like, kind of drummer for hire guy, although that could be really interesting. And I've got a couple things coming up in New York in that realm where I get to kind of be the guy, kind of a session guy, recording in a couple shows with this other singer-songwriter. So, and then of course, even when War Babies, when that thing, like I am so happy to just dive right into, not necessarily like assuming old rules, because, we like to think of ourselves as growing and, evolving. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, like assessing the situation and like, yeah, I'm going to be like the best drummer I can be in this project. And then if it's another project where it's more collaborative, you know, hey, I'm gonna bring some songs in and just kind of, you know, go that route. But yeah, I feel like I'm in a weird place where I can kind of do both. So I just not exactly sure how far to take the singer-songwriter thing, you know, because I think when you start talking about playing out and tours and whatnot, that's a whole other ball game, you know. And I'll have to be honest, like, it's been great to just be the drummer, you know, like
Yeah.
that has like an incredible thing, you know, because I think taking the singer-songwriter thing to the farthest degree, there's some pressure there. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, I'm pretty content with just recording and maybe not playing out live a whole lot, because it's really hard these days. I mean, there's so much content out there. There's so many bands. There's so many people doing it. And, you know, it's exciting. It's amazing. But at the same time, when you're getting older, it's like, maybe I'll, you know, get that gig with that band and just rock the drums, you know. So I'm kind of a little, you know, not so much on the fence, but just sort of, you know, kind of coexisting in those two realms, I think. And we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there
awesome.
Is there anything that we left off that you would like to plug or promote?
Oh man, no, you guys are great. It's been fantastic talking to you, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to, you know, just kind of dig into the music. And I've got vinyl that's going to arrive any day now, so I need to get both your addresses and send you some
vinyl. Oh, fantastic!
And yeah, that's a big part. I mean, I just love sharing it, and but yeah, you know, I guess spread the word, and I don't know, maybe I could send out some records to the Req'd Records, you know.
Yeah, definitely can do that.
It could be something kind of cool.
Well, this is how things are going to work out once we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Jeff, the editing wizard over here, will get this all cleaned up, and he'll make us all sound like $1 million.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And that could be really good, too, for, yeah, maybe as I get closer to the release date or what have you, you know, it could be really good.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
all right, man. We appreciate your time.
Man. You got it. Thank you so much, man. And, yeah, let's keep in touch, and I'll get talking to you.
All right.
Sounds great.
Take care.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. They roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.